Romancing Saga 2 is a complicated JRPG. Due to how unforgiving it can be, I believe many new players can have even more fun playing this game when going in with a basic understanding of its various systems. But if you want a truly blind experience, you may find it more rewarding, albeit time-consuming, to jump in and figure out these systems for yourself. Knowledge truly is power in the SaGa series. This series of videos is based on the remaster for PC, consoles, and mobile, since that's the only official way to play in English. It includes updated visuals and music, some extra content, and a few new quality of life features, although nearly all of the concepts discussed in this video also apply to the original Super Famicom release. No stats, characters, or core mechanics were changed for the remaster. With that out of the way, let's discuss stats and leveling in Romancing Saga 2. To begin, I'll define the stats covered in this video, starting with attributes. Every playable character has a subset of stats that the game refers to as attributes, which are shown on the attribute screen. Attributes include hit points or HP, magic points or MP, skill points or SP, life points or LP, strength, dexterity, magic, speed, stamina, defense, logic, and condition. The logic and condition attributes are hidden and not displayed on the character's attribute screen, although you can check your character's logic stats by using the logic meter inside each room of the magic research facility. HP represent how much damage your character can take before dying and works similarly to most RPGs. Unlike some RPGs, however, HP is fully replenished for every character after every battle. That's handy, especially in this game. MP is used for casting spells and again works similarly to many RPGs. MP is not refilled after a battle though. You must use an item or sleep in a bed for that. SP can be thought of as the equivalent of MP, but for weapon skills. Weapon skills are special attacks that can be learned based on weapon classes and won't be covered in detail in this video. Think of them as strong weapon attacks that have a cost, just like spells. SP is also not refilled after a battle, but can be refilled using various items or by sleeping. LP is somewhat of a unique mechanic to the SaGa series. When a character loses all their HP in battle, they fall and remain at 0 HP until healed, just like in many RPGs. However, they also lose 1 LP. When a character runs out of LP, they die permanently and are removed from your party. A character with 0 HP will lose an additional life point every time they are attacked, so healing them as soon as possible is usually a priority. LP is not restored by sleeping and can only be restored by a few rare items. In general, if you want to keep a character around, you should prevent them from losing LP as much as possible. This can greatly affect strategy in Romancing Saga 2 depending on your playstyle. Strength increases accuracy and damage of all weapon types except bows and small swords, including unarmed damage. Weapon types will be covered in more detail later in this video. Dexterity increases accuracy and damage of the bow and small sword weapon types. Magic increases the power of all spells from schools other than Umbrology or Dark Magic. Speed increases accuracy of all weapon attacks, increases unarmed damage, increases evasion rates, and affects action order in battle. Stamina increases HP gain when a character levels up. Defense decreases damage received, but this stat is misleading. There are several types of defense that will be explained in the defense stats section a little bit later. Logic increases the power of dark magic spells, but decreases power of spells from other magic schools. Condition is a hidden stat not displayed anywhere in game. Like stamina, it increases HP gain when a character levels up. It also affects recovery from some statuses and affects the efficacy of a few weapon skills. In general, you don't need to worry about condition much, but there are several references on the web if you're curious. Of these, HP, MP, SP, and LP are what I will call primary attributes. Aside from LP, these are increased as the character battles and are the only attributes that increase via battling. Primary attributes are not affected by the global leveling system, which I'll discuss later in the video. However, they are all based on different formulas, which I'll explain shortly. Non-primary attributes, on the other hand, are unique to each character in the game and do not increase from battling. Armor and other equipable items are the only way to increase these stats, and not all of them can be increased. Every character also has a stat for each of the weapon types and magic schools, which I'll refer to as weapon levels and magic levels respectively. Weapons in the game include swords, great swords, clubs and rods, axes, small swords, also known as épées, spears, bows, and unarmed, also known as martial arts. However, there is not a separate stat for each of these weapons. Instead, they're grouped into what I call weapon types. These are the levels you see for each character on the equipment screen and other screens in the menu. Weapon types include slash, blunt, pierce, arrow, also known as missile, and unarmed. Great swords and swords deal damage based on a character's slash level. Clubs, rods, and axes use the blunt level. Épées and spears use the pierce level. Hoes use the arrow level, and basic unarmed attacks use the martial arts level. Damage calculation uses a unique formula for each weapon type, but in general, the higher your weapon level, the more damage you will do. Pretty standard RPG stuff. Magic levels include divine or light magic, fire magic, water magic, wind magic, earth magic, and dark magic. Magic levels are only shown on the attribute screen for schools of magic that the character has learned. Furthermore, magic levels should not be confused with the character's overall magic attribute, which, along with their logic attribute, is used to determine what I will call their spell power. For all schools of magic except for dark magic, a character's magic attribute increases their spell power, while their logic attribute decreases it. This means that having a higher logic value means less spell power, so it can be worth your while to recruit mages with relatively low logic and high magic attributes, although few characters have a good magic to logic ratio that will result in exceptionally high spell power. For dark magic, higher logic results in higher spell power, while the magic attribute is ignored. However, there are only a few dark magic spells that deal damage, none of which are very good. In general, you shouldn't need to worry about logic too much, but it can be worth checking if you really want to min-max. Damage calculation for a spell takes into account both the character's aforementioned spell power and their magic level for that spell's school of magic, as well as the strength of the spell itself. Non-damaging spells use their own formula, which may be discussed in a future video. At the end of a battle, your party receives tech points for the battle based on the difficulty of the defeated enemies. These points are displayed at the end of each battle. Think of tech points as experience points received from enemies. That's all they really are. Each character's HP, weapon levels, and magic levels may increase based on the tech points earned in the battle. When this happens, a character will do a spin, and a notice that the stat increased will be displayed. You can then see these changes reflected on the character's attributes screen. Tech points received from battle are used in a formula along with the character's condition attribute to determine whether their HP should increase and by how much. Because condition is a hidden attribute, it's generally not worth thinking about this formula too much. Your success in this game is unlikely to depend on a character's condition value. Just remember that the more you battle, the more each character's HP will increase. Again, pretty standard RPG stuff. SP and MP can also increase over time, but in different ways. A character's SP is calculated by multiplying their highest weapon level by 3 and adding their total levels in other weapons. MP is calculated by multiplying a character's highest magic level by 3 adding their total levels in other magic schools, plus a base of 5 MP for having learned magic in the first place. This means characters who have not learned any schools of magic will always have 0 maximum MP, which is okay, as MP is only used for casting spells in this game. Finally, life points are inherent to each character, and maximum LP cannot be increased. As such, some of the best unit classes have low LP to help balance them. Increases to weapon and magic levels are more complicated. A character's weapon and magic levels increase based on usage, and tech points from the battle are applied to each weapon type or magic type used according to the following formula. This means that the more a character uses a particular weapon or magic type in the battle, the more points they'll receive for that weapon or magic type. For example, take a character who has a sword, axe, and bow equipped. If the battle lasted 3 turns, and the character used the sword on 2 turns and the axe on 1 turn, they will receive 0 points toward their bow level, some points toward their axe level, and even more points toward their sword level. In addition to tech points, characters also gain what I will call action points. These are completely hidden and never referenced in the game. Each character gets 1 action point for every time they used a weapon or magic type. They also gain a number of points based on how many SP or MP they expended for that weapon or magic type in the battle. This means that using high-cost weapon skills or magic spells results in more points gained toward the associated weapon or magic level. After the battle, both tech points and action points are added to the character's internal weapon and or magic stats, which are hidden from the player. Once a stat hits a certain threshold, the associated weapon or magic type will level up for that character. However, there's a hard limit of 1 level per battle for each weapon or magic type for each character. Any points beyond that are wasted. This means that a character can't gain more than 1 level per weapon or magic type per battle. So, for a long battle against difficult enemies that results in a lot of tech points, it's best to use multiple weapons or magic types for each character. If a character used their sword on every turn, they would be wasting a lot of points. A character's defense stat is based entirely on what armor they have equipped. This includes any rings or other items equipped in their 3 armor slots on the equipment screen. When wearing no armor, a character's defense stat will be 0. Armor does not affect any other stats. However, this defense value is a bit misleading. Each character actually has multiple defense stats, 1 for each type of damage. Types of damage include slash, blunt, also known as strike, pierce, arrow, also known as missile, heat, cold, lightning, dark, and status. These are shown in an extremely simplified form in the gray defense traits box on their attribute screen. This box will display an icon for each defensive stat that has a value of 10 or greater, but it will not show you what that value is. An exception to this is slash defense. A sword icon will be shown if the character has at least 1 point in slash defense. Therefore, if a character is wearing 2 pieces of armor that total to 8 in pierce defense, no spear icon will appear. If, however, the total pierce defense of their armor is at least 10, you will see a spear icon. Note that status defense is indicated by a purple shield. As you might surmise, the defensive traits box in general is not very useful, as 10 points in 1 defensive stat is not all that much when you get to the endgame. Several pieces of armor will give 20, 30, or even 40 or more points to various defensive stats. I recommend consulting an armor list on the SaGa fandom site for complete stat information. Romance in SaGa 2 has 2 separate leveling systems, global levels and personal levels. So far, everything discussed falls under personal leveling. Now I'll address the global leveling system. Tech points received from each battle also go towards your empire's global level. In the same way that tech points contribute to characters' weapon and magic levels, they also increase the global levels of each of those stats. You can think of this as a sort of global character always lurking in the background. However, global points work a little differently from personal leveling. After a battle, the full tech points received from the enemies are applied to your global weapon and magic level for each weapon and magic type according to this formula. While this may suggest that you have to use weapon skills instead of regular attacks to gain global points for a weapon, that's not the case. Like with personal levels, global levels also take action points into account. The total action points gained by your entire party for each weapon or magic type are also added to the associated global weapon and magic levels. Once again, this means that the more you use a particular weapon type or spell, the more points you'll gain toward the global level for that weapon or magic type. Also, unlike personal levels, there is no limit on the number of global levels you can gain from a single battle. This means that if you sit in a battle using weak attacks for dozens of turns, you can pump up your global levels quickly, all from one battle. So what are global levels used for? The global level for any given weapon or magic type affects how high a character's respective weapon or magic levels will be when you first recruit them. Each character in the game has a unique and inherent set of modifiers for each weapon and magic type. They are hidden and cannot be changed, although reference lists for each character's hidden stats are available on the web. These modifiers can be positive or negative and are added to the global levels for each weapon and magic type when you recruit them, resulting in that character's starting levels. Characters from the same class tend to have similar modifiers for most weapon and magic types, although there is some variance. Let's look at an example. When you recruit a mage who comes with water magic, their water magic level will equal the character's personal water magic modifier plus your global level for water magic. So, if your global water magic level is 5 and you recruit a male court mage such as Taurus who learns water magic by default and has a water magic modifier of +2, he will start with a magic level of 7 for water magic. This works the same way when teaching water magic to any character who previously didn't know it. Even non-mages have a water magic modifier, but it's generally going to be negative. For example, let's assume your global water magic level is 5. If you recruit Walrus, a heavy infantry character with a water magic modifier of -7, and then teach him water magic, he will start at level 1 for water magic, which is the minimum. Weapon levels work exactly the same way as magic levels. This should show how important it is to use the right classes for the right types of work. Recruiting a class who's inherently bad with swords, such as the Ranger, who all have -7 for their sword modifier, and forcing them to use swords will result in much slower progress than if you had given them a bow, which they're naturally good with. However, this all depends on your playstyle. Let's say you want to focus entirely on magic. Because your party can only contain one character from any given class, and in the early game only a few types of mages are available, it may still be a good idea to teach every character the magic schools you want to use, and have them use spells at least once per battle, even if they're naturally bad with magic. That's because their action points from spellcasting still contribute toward the magic type's global level. Then, when you unlock better mage classes such as the Iris, they will be even stronger due to high global magic levels. As a final point, global magic levels are also used to unlock new spells at the Magic Research Facility. For example, once your global fire magic level hits 13, you'll unlock the Flame Whip spell. You will then be able to teach that spell to anyone in your party who has learned fire magic, regardless of their personal fire magic level. That's all there is to global levels. When you boil it down, they only affect how strong a character is when you first recruit them, as well as the strength of your final Emperor. But this is much more important than it may sound. It's often a good strategy to recruit new classes of characters when they become available, since you unlock better classes throughout the game. When you do, your global levels are essential to being able to recruit characters with high weapon and/or magic levels and not have to waste time leveling them up personally. Because of this, it's generally a good idea to focus on only a few weapon types for your entire party. That about covers the basics and a little more of stats and leveling in Romancing Saga 2. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, comments, or corrections, please leave them in the comments section below.